Hey, what's up, guys? On today's bonus episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, I'm once again joined by DJ Zullo to talk about how Karl-Anthony Towns will elevate the New York Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, though. Rare exception, I hope today it's your second listen because we already put out a full episode with DJ Zullo previewing OG Anunoby's upcoming season. We were both super duper high on the impact he can have on this team and how him and Mikal Bridges can maybe each single-handedly, double-handedly help them hold up on that end of the floor. But before we talked about that, I asked him his thoughts on the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. I thought it was going to take about 5 minutes, typically, because I like to talk a lot. We went about 15, so I decided to put this out as a separate bonus episode. So here's DJ Zullo talking about what Karl-Anthony Towns will bring to the New York Knicks. All right, guys, as promised, lucky enough to be joined by DJ Zullo, a contributor for Knicks Film School. You can follow him on X at DJ Ace NBA. DJ, man, welcome to the show. Last time we talked, we were going over Isaiah Hartenstein's departure, what Mikal Bridges was going to bring to the table. This episode is nominally to do a player preview for OG Anunoby, but since we scheduled it a week ago, got some pretty substantial news. Karl-Anthony Towns is now a New York Knick. Unless I missed it somewhere, I don't think you've gotten a chance to share your thoughts publicly, at least in podcast form yet. How you feeling? You sounded a little conflicted when we were talking about it pre-show. What's on your mind since this trade's happened?
Yeah, I mean the overall, and thanks for having me on, Gavin. Always a pleasure. We were talking before that we hit record as well about just the need to get the season going. But this is first of all, just the shock value of the trade. Cat was always the big rumor, but always felt a little bit unattainable. And as we got closer to media day training camp, it just seemed like it was not going to happen, at least at this juncture. And then you're skeptical of a trade of that nature is going to happen mid-season. So I'm sure, like everyone else, caught by surprise. And then you just try to process it. And, my main takeaway is if the goal here is he's going to be the 5, which I think is how they're going to deploy him. But if Cat is the 5, then I think this is a win trade for the Knicks in terms of the ceiling on offense, the what it does for Brunson, the potential pairing between Cat and Brunson, I think it will eclipse rather easily the pairing of Ant Edwards and Cat, which never really seemed to be, although I thought they were personality fits, I don't think their games meshed on the floor as well as I think the Timberwolves front office would have hoped. So I think the pairing is great with your superstar player. He's going to make life easier for Brunson. He's going to, I think, potentially give the Knicks a offense that can conceivably be one of the 3 or 4 best offenses in the NBA. I think that should be the expectation going in. I think the questions will be obviously on the defensive end, where I think there's enough in turn, we're going to talk about one of them. There's enough insulation around Cat and around Brunson to where you can still have a quality defense. The question will be, is it a great defense? Is it a very good defense? Is it a solid defense? Is it a below average defense? Like there's levels to where I think this defense could go depending on, injuries and health and the depth of this team, which is now a major question in terms of like how deep they go. So overall, very, very happy with the trade. Obviously, Julius is a guy that I've grown to really be fond of. I think he had a fantastic Knicks career, and I thought he was going to have a big year this year. I thought his, while I don't think he is as clean a fit as Cat in terms of the offensive side of the ball with Brunson, I thought he was good enough to where they can play off each other. And then obviously we had January last year, and I just wanted to see Julius with a healthy Knicks roster with Mikal Bridges and try to see what the ceiling of that team was. And obviously DiVincenzo had one of the greatest shooting seasons in the history of the franchise, a player the Knicks clearly didn't want to give up. The reporting is pretty on point regarding it was Mitchell Robinson. It was obviously Randle to make the money work. DiVincenzo was sort of a late addition, which seemed to get the T-Wolves to really bite at this trade offer, but you have to give to get. And I think the upside for this team now is higher than it was, a week ago.
Yeah, you nailed a lot of what I've been saying, a lot of what I've been thinking about this trade. I think that the pain points were very similar. That this would be a lot easier if you played 21 games, the Knicks were 10 and 11. You were like, hey, like at least without Mitchell Robinson, this just isn't working. The spacing isn't really super ideal. Dante DiVincenzo is only playing 20 minutes a game because there just isn't time for him. And if you checked off all those boxes and that was our reality to say, yeah, you know what, let's bring Karl-Anthony Towns, let's have the space and let's have the shooting. And it sucks that the cap logistics of this didn't allow the Knicks to push into the season and made it sort of a necessity that they get this done at this time.
Right.
I'm curious what you think when Mitchell Robinson comes back, what role he plays, because I know you were just really driving home. You like it with Cat at center. I think that is pretty clearly going to be the closing lineup for this team. That is certainly like the lineup you want out there against teams like the Celtics to say like, hey, like this is the way we're feasibly going to score on you in a high level in high leverage situations. But I'm kind of intrigued about Cat and Mitch and if it can replicate some of what you got in Minnesota with Cat and Gobert and them just being an all-world type defense, with the Knicks having similar tertiary talent on that end with Mikal Bridges, with OG Anunoby playing the role of Anthony Edwards and McDaniels out on the perimeter, Jalen Brunson, Mike Conley, kind of like for like, and maybe like with the Knicks version of this team still being able to find offense just because of how good those other four guys are. But how do you think that lineup works? And do you think there is a significant role still for Mitch when it seems like the Knicks are, based on what we've heard, are very open to trading him right now?
Clearly open to trading him. And, I like to think there's a role for him. There was a point where he was playing upwards of 30 minutes a night and had pushed into like a legitimate top 15 NBA center, but it just seems like there's been so much loss of athleticism. And then it's not even, and then we have to talk about the injury concern. So assuming he is back by January, February, and he's healthy and he's able to play 15, 20 minutes a night, I think having the option to go two bigs makes a lot of sense. And Minnesota provided, as you alluded to, the blueprint to where that can really work. I still would. Now, again, we'll see. We're going to have data. We're going to have significant lineup data to see like what is the Cat 5 minutes look like. I think it's going to be good enough to where it's not a conversation about whether or not you're starting a legitimate center, if it's Mitch or someone else they trade for with Cat. But I think it's a lineup versatility aspect that the team should go to. And one of the interesting things about Cat's season last year was, and this was a little counterintuitive and surprised me when I looked at the numbers, was that his 3-point rate was actually higher with Gobert than it was when he was at the 5 with Naz Reid playing the 4. And if you watch the film, you realize how intuitive Gobert had become to set off-ball screens for Towns, especially when Towns was trailing and Gobert would. I think I posted one or two of them. It's typically where like you have a high impact ball handler, Conley or Edwards on the wing. They push early. You have initial help defense sort of closing that gap to prevent the Edwards or Conley drive. And that gap defender, which a lot of times was the Towns defender, would be screened down by Gobert, and Cat would just walk into a wide open above the break 3. That was a very common action. And of course, their horn set where it's Gobert Towns, a lot of flare screens off that. So they really tapped into Gobert as a screen setter for Towns, which I think, I don't think Robinson, he can screen well. I don't know if he is as intuitive. These are flow screens. They weren't like call plays. So I don't know if he has the awareness that Gobert has to be able to set that. But if him or Achua can tap into that, you can maybe see a way to keep their offensive ceiling at a high enough level to make it work, because the defense obviously would be better. And you're right. I think Mitch can do, he's clearly, that goes without saying, he's not a Gobert level defender, but he can approximate that maybe a little bit and allow Cat to take the matchup of the top defender big on the other team, and then allow Mitch to roam. And he really hasn't had that opportunity as a Knick. So we don't know what a Mitchell Robinson roam defender looks like. That could really be something unique and something that really fits his skill set at this point. So I think versatility with Cat is, I think, one of the big reasons why they made the trade, because you can play him at the 5 or the 4. So I think it's something they're going to have to look to. I think even Achua at the 5 with Cat, or if Achua is the 4, however you want to describe that, those two playing together, I think makes sense if you have enough shooting around them. Maybe a McBride Brunson backcourt, and you have so much shooting there, and you could fill in with the wings, and then you have enough to keep your offense at a high level, and the defense should be really good. So I think it speaks to the versatility that Cat brings to this offense, which, I think there's not a lot of time, but they have enough time before the season starts to really have a good plan of how to deploy him in the most effective ways.
Yeah, I think I really like the idea of having that group as a playoff curveball. And my biggest lingering concern as the Knicks have become more talented and gotten more shooting was it's sort of like, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but like the ship of Theseus thing. Like how many like pieces do you replace before it's no longer the same ship anymore?
Right.
And,
well, it's crazy how different this team is going to be.
All right, guys, we're going to continue with DJ talking about how the Knicks can insulate Karl-Anthony Towns defensively, some of the lineups they can put around him. But first, I wanted to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet this weekend. I am looking at Thursday night, Tampa Bay, Atlanta. I am stunned that the Falcons are 1.5-point favorites in this game. I think Tampa's clearly been the better team so far. Baker Mayfield has played at a much higher level than Kirk Cousins. He has much better weapons than Kirk Cousins does. I think Tampa Bay is going to roll. I am shocked that they are an underdog even on the roll. I think that's easy money. But hey, if you get started with FanDuel, the $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with only $5, you're getting off to a good start no matter what the result of your first bet is. So head over to FanDuel.com to get rolling. And we also want to tell you about our good friends over at Game Time. So what is the magic of Game Time? Well, they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Personally, I am looking at Suns preseason games. I just moved to the Phoenix area. I'm just a couple blocks away from the arena. I want to go to as many games as possible. I found about 20 rows up, row 28, section 113, $84 tickets. I know it's a preseason game. I know they're not always the most fun. I just don't typically get to sit in that section. I can't afford it, but preseason with the help of Game Time, I definitely can. If you want to save even more money, you got to look to the Game Time guarantee. So this is what really makes them different. You find a lower price ticket on a competing site. Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. So there's no reason to ever use another site because Game Time is always going to be the cheapest. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Right. And yeah. I was just thinking about that in terms of like, all right, clearly you're totally into modern spacing, maybe more into modern spacing than any team this side of the Celtics is in the NBA. You're going to get up a million threes. You've so much more, or like at least like more efficient skill than you had in the past, flexibility on defense. And that's all exciting, but you don't want to lose what made this team great initially, which was that defensive toughness, was that offensive rebounding. I think that core wing trio of Hart, Anunoby, Bridges, as we're going to get into, is going to keep you tough on the defensive end. I think the rebounding Cat is especially early in his career when he's playing more center, like a very good defensive rebounder. Was an elite defensive rebounder in his first 4 seasons in the NBA. Hart will obviously help you out on the offensive end. But I think having Mitchell Robinson as a curveball to throw into and say, hey, this is going to be like a classic smash mouth Knicks lineup with the flair of having like a super elite shooting 4 instead of a 4 who could kind of shoot and was willing to put them up in Julius Randle. I think that's going to be really fun and really interesting. And that was kind of one of my biggest concerns in trading Dante and trading Julius, was that you lose that toughness, you lose in Dante some defensive playmaking, and you just lose some of that quality depth where like what had me excited about the other version of the Knicks roster that I had some real questions about was just how many different options they could throw on an opposing guard, like how they could send waves and waves and waves at defenders, at like star perimeter players. And you lose a little bit of that. But I think when Mitch is healthy, there are still ways to kind of replicate that. And it could be really intimidating for opponents when you're getting 2 completely different styles of basketball, whether Cat's a 4 or 5.
Yeah. And it could be team matchup dependent. Like I was thinking, like if you're playing Orlando, I mean, that big lineup like that, whether it is Achua or Sims or Robinson with Cat, I think you can mitigate some of the concerns about, how that lineup would be exposed against a better offensive team, but really like match up against the Orlando big wings and big power forwards, and the ball handling and the skill that they have, and make it tough on them. So I think there's certainly teams. I think Cleveland might be another one where you have enough wings to guard Mitchell, and then you could just match them size for size, or just go, you can go curveball on the other end and just go smaller and try to, outscore him in that way. So there's definitely ways you can be a versatile offense, versatile defense. I think with Cat on the defensive end compared to Randle, the 7-foot size is just, I know Cat is not a good defensive player, but you're just 7 feet and you're in the way. And as you mentioned, that I think he's a better defensive rebounder than Randle, despite like the actual like raw numbers. I just think he is, he's got a bigger reach. I think he's better. He's a better box out player. And then he's just, when he goes up with two hands, and that's one of the things he's really good at, is he goes up with two strong, and he gets the spots Randle couldn't. So there's just ways for him to impact on defense that Randle just had physical restraints. And then this is just another idea that this team really values Deuce McBride, and he's going to be like such a key piece. He was key in the playoffs and in the second half of the year, and he's going to be the sixth man basically, and he's going to play 20 minutes a night probably. And that shooting that that really popped last year has to continue, and can he extend the range a little bit? And is there some more playmaking that has been developing over the past couple of years that he could really lean into? And then they're going to have to find someone else. It's going to have to be like, do they find lightning in a bottle with Shamet, or Cameron Payne have a nice year? Do they make a trade midseason? So they're going to have to address the depth issue, but I think that is a problem you can probably fix midseason with an Achua salary. Maybe Mitch is part of that, and you have like some swaps you can offer to bring in another rotation player. But to get Cat and to raise your ceiling and make this offense, at least for the starters, in terms of their ceiling, as good as any team in the NBA. So you have to make the trade, despite where it just leaves you thin and vulnerable to injury, but a trade you probably had to make when it all came down to it.
All right, guys, that is it for this mini-sode with DJ. Again, if you missed it, we did 35 minutes earlier on OG Anunoby. It's really, really good, I promise. Plenty more great content coming down the pike this week. Hope you enjoy it, and excited to keep talking Knicks with you here on Locked On Knicks.